I'm live. Oh my god. Yeah. So sorry, I haven't. I set up a kind of a schedule for myself to do some shows during the week, and of course, it's a holiday. It's December. It's hard to do stuff like that, and you get home from a Thursday afternoon, hard at work, drive home from the commute, get on the couch, and just fall asleep. That was kind of my Thursday, and then other holiday planning. So that's just how it is. Oh, for those who are new here, I'm Dave Marks, the Spy Guy, and this is my channel where I talk about usually like foreign policy and intelligence and that kind of stuff, or history. And that's the kind of things I do. And I recently had a bunch of new subscribers. I'm going to talk about something that happened to me last night that is kind of subscriber related. I just finished writing an angry letter to another locals page because, frankly, last night I'm sending out a couple super chats, and what do I get for my trouble? Insulted. Talk down to, I won't say what that channel is or the thing. I don't want people going over there and insulting them, but generally, Jesus, like, I have plenty of money. This is a hobby for me for the most part. I would love to be a millionaire. Like my friend Andy's got like 500,000 channels, and we'll get to him in a moment. This is, but to think that, you're so big and powerful, and these guys are like 5,000 people, so they're not that big. But the think that they get to, like, you get someone sending you their hard-earned money, and instead of being polite about it, you don't have to go and actually follow up, but just be nice, like say, oh, thanks for the information, or that's something I didn't consider before. No, it's like, no, no, you're wrong, and you're or and the other one was like, you're, and did this to a number of people, you're shilling for another channel. I'm like, wow, like, who cares if they're giving you money? But kind of be polite about it. Be like, someone sends you something about some other show or channel, you should be saying like, well, maybe I'll check them out. Or, I am kind of busy, but I appreciate just like general thankfulness. Instead, it's like, no, what am I doing here? I'm like, so fine, I wrote it. Now I know I have been on the channel once long ago, and I do know the what is it, the owner, and and he'll respond probably much better. I'm sure it was his co-host was the one who was being a real dick about things. So uh, he'll probably be like, you need to cut this out. Like, don't be so condescending prick to people. Anyways, that was kind of that. My friend Andy, who's over at Popcorn Planet, he had a hit piece put out on him by NBC News. So, well, congratulations, you've hit the big time when people are out there insulting you in this kind of like writing up hit pieces in major news platforms. It shows, as I said to him, well, it shows you're over the target zone if people are coming for you like this. So, congratulations on getting your first hit. Well, not first, but like, congratulations. Now you know they're out to get you. So, what is it? I was looking at the Dreizin Report earlier, and he's got his like, I've retired. So let's talk about some of the stuff that's going on in the world. So he does not like. He's a guy who's what some people call a micro thinker. He's also definitely on the spectrum and or micro things. So he looks at the small things and sees what's going on in the world, and then extrapolates them out over large things. Whereas a lot of people I like, and even myself, I can look at things as a macro analysis. These big trends are happening. So he's talking about Elon Musk and why is Elon Musk is Tesla is one such bubble. He's suggesting that Tesla is going to crash. A lot of people think that's going to happen, and Musk needed to get his money out of Tesla and into Twitter so it'd be actually valuable. And that's his kind of thing. And I'm sure that's part of the reason why. I also think Musk was just, as many people have said, he was like someone like Rob Barnes says, he's just buying himself cover. Like, something was happening with the Biden White House, and he was just like, nope, not going to do that. I have no interest in becoming like this. So he decided he became a right winger. So he had, like a lot of people, he had to choose a side. So he's chosen a side to get the protection from that side. And clearly he sees conservatives on the right on the long-term bet plan, or he just didn't want whatever the hell the Democrats wanted him to do or Biden wanted him to do. He was like, I am not cool with this thing. So he's like, I'm going to go with the people who are pro-growth versus the people who are anti-growth. And that is something that Elon Musk is all about. We know he wants to pop. He's like me. He understands we have to leave this planet if we're going to survive as a species. We need to go other places and do other things in order to live. And we're not all just going to sit here on this ball of rock until the sun explodes. Maybe we have the heat death of the universe, but some things indicate that might not be the inevitable thing. Anyways, that's a little beyond myself. I hate thinking about stuff like that where it goes on forever. Because, I'm just a guy who's in his 40s who wants to have kids someday, I guess. Okay. What is it? So all good people everywhere. What is it? And it was like, yeah, he's gone after the Elon Musk got over the sensors. So what is the problem with Tesla? See, your car, Tesla claims its batteries are good for at least 350,000 miles, but they're now only warranted for 100,000 to 150,000 miles, or 8 years, whichever comes first. Tesla only guarantees charge retention of 70% of new. Yeah, these battery cars are ridiculous. Now, I have heard, I was listening to another guy who was talking about them a bit more authoritative, and he says, what's going to happen is we're going to own these cars, and they're going to have the batteries can be switched out, and there will be someone who's taken away. But for my thinking, I think the electric cars are very much like remember when we had, there was a time when we were getting off the electric light bulb, and we ended up with LEDs. But for a little while in between, and they mandated this in the United States, you couldn't buy the old style light bulbs anymore for something that has a phosphorescence in it. And the thing about these light bulbs, if they broke, it was like toxic waste was released from them. You had to have them specially disposed of, and all this other crazy things. You couldn't just throw them out in the trash or anything. You had to take them to a toxic disposal site and get your room cleaned if they broke. And thankfully they got replaced by LEDs, but electric cars seem to me be very much like this. To recycle the battery, you have to take them to a place where guys in suits will dismember them. And I don't mean suits like in a zoot suit. I mean full on toxic chemicals suit. Our cars in the future are going to be basically running on heavy lead, on basically giant things of pollution that are way more toxic than the smog that was getting released out of hybrids, which we are seemingly trying to get rid of for some reason, even though they seem to be best. But what ended up happening with those light bulbs is that they were replaced by LEDs, which were way better, cheaper, and weren't no toxic waste stuff. And what we're just starting to see, if you watch I remember watching the video from Cold Fusion, he was talking about how future cars are going to be this. They have just developed some sort of graphene light batteries, and if they can scale them up, and which will probably be in the next 10 years, we'll have these car batteries that for electric cars that are way cleaner than the current ones. So I feel that's kind of in the phase we are in, is that we're in that stupid weird phase where we had the very crappy toxic waste light bulbs, and we're just around the corner from LEDs. But we have to go through this phase that we did in the George W. Bush administration. That's how long ago that happened, where we have crappy light bulbs, and we're going to get nicer light bulbs. So that's how I feel that's going to work out. Oh yeah, here's something that Dreizen does point out. Once everyone's battery starts to run down, i.e. hundreds of thousands, a million each year, it's kind of like buying a house in one of those subdivisions where everything was built at the same time, and then 15 years in everything starts to fall apart at the same time. Never buy a house in a subdivision like that. Always buy it like, get your separate architect or something else, because that often apparently is a thing. I've seen it on some other channels that I watched during the lockdown. It's just like, you buy this house in the subdivision, they were all built at the same time, they all fail, they all fall apart, and suddenly you're trying to sell a house in the middle of this neighborhood where all the other houses are just as bad looking as yours. Not a good plan. uh, so once everyone's battery starts to run down, what will that do to the replacement battery price? And at that point, just go ahead and buy a new car. Your Tesla is scrap metal. But before you can sell it for scrap, I assume it will be on to you to pay to separate and dispose of the half ton of toxic batteries. You'll have to pay to dispose the car. The car. Great. uh, he's going on about how he hates Bitcoin, which I don't care about. What else? He's talking about how it's clearly illegal and made by the CIA. I don't think so. Like, you talk to someone like Tom Luongo or some of these other more Bitcoin guys, there is stuff that's happening that are sign-on order effects, just like I'm sure the CIA is using it to find illegal stuff, but it's not the same thing as you can do with the blockchain. Like, big plants, like, in order to generate the final Bitcoins, they're now putting nuclear power plants excess energy towards this. Large corporations are being forced to buy energy production for things in order to keep mining for Bitcoin. This is that has nothing to do with a CIA plan. So that doesn't make any sense to me. So I've never owned a Bitcoin. I don't know if every time I'm tempted, I just go and buy another gold coin. But there's stuff happening. I might sit down one day and like tell my broker, just give me $1,000 of this stuff and let it accumulate. That seems to be kind of the thing to do with Bitcoin. But that's my thought on that. So there's just like, or sorry, those are just where I'm thinking. There's all these weird side-on world-changing effects that have been done by Bitcoin that seem to be there by design to encourage people to do it. I'm much more in the belief that it was a team of computer scientists that put it together, and they wanted certain things out of it. Here's me doing a Rubio, and that is what we're seeing from here. On to Ukraine. Since early March, it has been the world's largest prison camp. With very rare exceptions for work reason, if the employer is large and well connected and the job can't be performed without trial, or unless a bribe of tens of thousands of dollars is paid, or unless they have a medical waiver, a male ages 16 to 60 simply can't leave the country. Not by plane, not by car, not on foot, not on anyhow. Whoever tries to walk through the woods to Romania, wherever, and gets caught by the border guard is arrested, put in jail, and then sent to join the Ukrainian army. Once in the army, there are no options, except for trying to surrender to the Russians. In July, a law was passed allowing commanders to kill any soldier on the spot who fails to follow any order. No detention, no trial, not even a proper firing squad. You can be sure that law was passed not just because, but because it was badly needed, and it has been used. Compares it to Stalin's USSR, which I'm starting to hear. I really need to look into that more, where it might not have been quite as bad. I think the penal battalions certainly do exist, where they would walk soldiers through minefields and other more disgusting jobs. But the Soviet Union also had a manpower shortage by the end. So, of course, as for free speech, the regime is the media. There is no other media. All true alt media has been shut down, much in fast last year with the outspoken support of the US and UK. Even the pro-Western but anti-Zelensky media has been crushed. They still have their job, but they literally have to do daily talking points from the Zelensky administrator. Right? They nationalize their media, and then you wonder why no one's talking. It's good. Like uh, they were talking about how the country was 99%, or what was it? That Zelensky has 90% approval ratings. How do you tell that do polling in a country that's literally at war? Like maybe you could poll Kiev. I was watching some propaganda videos on Twitter where all these clean speaking people in Ukraine were supposedly saying, "Oh yeah, during the blackouts we play our YouTube videos and we'll play games on our iPhones. It's great. It's fine." No, it's not. I can tell you that all those people are paid actors. As for the cultural divide, the Russian language has been completely banned in all professional settings and public spaces and venues. You mean like English in Quebec? Even though over half the population, even half the army, speaks Russian as their first and oftentimes only language. On TV, even in Kiev, where everyone speaks perfect, unaccented Russian, you see nothing but Ukrainian speech. Even let's go with this bystander says interview is only in Ukrainian only, perhaps because it's illegal to broadcast anything in Russian. It's illegal to show the real country on television. Now that's the Soviet Union for you. As yet, authorities only just started finding people for speaking Russian. I thought they were finding people a long time ago. Anyway, the regime is targeting Ukrainian Orthodox Church, not the real one, for being insufficiently rah-rah. Right? Like, it's getting scary out there, folks. They're raiding monasteries and churches in Ukraine for that. You know what? I should have been doing this. It's not too late. Present. And window. Sorry, I'm slow. So here you go. Ukrainian soldiers raiding churches live on YouTube. Well, I guess not live. I guess it's just me showing something from my inbox from another guy's webpage, but all credit to Dreizen. And the charges are literally spreading Russian propaganda in the Russian world to the world. Wow. The head, by other accounts, the press office of the Ukrainian military intelligence suggested the pre-speech rated for Ukrainian soldiers held by Russia. Lol. Wow, that's great. Aren't you so glad that your money is going to help these people? I mean, come on. This is moving fast. It appears there are now plans to confiscate the Kiev Pershka Lavra and hand it over to the regime-approved breakaway faction, the head of Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council, Oleksiy Danilov, a former racketeer from Lugansk. Oh yeah, remember, all these guys in charge of Ukraine are all criminals. How does an actor who is becomes president go from be worth $1 billion? Because he is a Democrat. I don't know. Anyway, today in the Ukraine, who challenged the narrator who speaks out in any way is basically guaranteed to suffer physical harm and or detention and prosecution for treason, perhaps disappearance, even death. Yes, we have definitely seen that where they've taken out people who were thought to be pro-Russian mayors and just executed them. None of this will fly in the Ukraine unless there's some harmless litigant straight up disappeared cyanide. There's a guy, well, of course, we only got Zelda is dealing with that stuff himself, but he's a bit too prominent that they couldn't just disappear. And I don't think they'll disappear everyone. But they do. Yeah, but it's definitely there's snitches everywhere. People talk about the French partisans being this, and we have the Gestapo files where it's just like the guys who are most ready to many of the resistance leaders turned out to be people who are snitching on their neighbors over anything in occupied France. This household in Kherson was raided on advice from a couple of snitches, probably looking to settle score. You can see them pointing fingers one the other. The soldiers have no idea. They throw some accusation, make the mom and son spread out against the fence. So silly. Must have watched too many cops reruns. No, the soldiers obviously got nothing beyond. What do you have? A bunch of rubles? You must be an enemy spotter. The son claims to have worked a manual job at the Kherson government. Of course, he was paid in rubles. Over 700 have been detained in right bank Kherson, but only 7 charged so far. Almost all the real collaborators made it out amongst the 100,000 civilians who evacuated with Russia, of course. Of note, a highly credible Russian source claims the head of the Kherson city jail, an officer named Kirill Russian, chose not to evacuate and then was arrested and executed by the Ukraine Security Service. Right. You can't pass propaganda. Yeah, my babysitter from that part of the world believes the widespread fake Ukro news story that some humanoid Asiatic or yet Mongol Russian soldier an address not identified in the town not identified looted an electric tea kettle but left the base as he'd never seen an electric kettle before. Yeah, this is the dumbest nonsense. And it's not just his babysitter. I've had discussions with people I actually respect who believe nonsense like Russian soldiers bolting on freaking refrigerators onto the fronts of tanks like some sort of blade of armor. This is nonsense. Just like who loots a tea kettle? Russians drink tea all day, right? It's like the freaking we used to have this commercial in Canada where it was the Russians were it was this commercial for Tetley tea, and it shows a bunch of Russian hockey players drinking tea, and they say, "Oh, you come to Canada for this or that," and they're like, "We came for the tea." Russians drink tea, not coffee, because that's what you can grow there. Like, yet we continue to have this kind of nonsense where people believe the absolute dumbest things about Russia. And it is, I get it. We've been propagandized, but it's just so stupid. Like, people do not, you really think that of these people? They're not, we're up against an intelligent, cunning enemy, and you're believing the dumbest things. And because we believe they're stupid, we'll go and do something stupid too. And then we'll find out they're not stupid. They'll kill a whole bunch of our people. And then we'll wonder why the hell that happened. I thought they were dumb. No, we're dumb. Stop believing nonsense. Like, gets me so mad. It's just like, one of the things we knew, I wrote an article and I did a game on Russia invading Poland in the far off year of 2020. And one of the things we knew during the annexation of Crimea is that the Russian soldiers don't carry cell phones. They simply don't. They understand that the cell phone is a direct link to the NSA. And we know this because during one of the things that the Edward Snowden walked off and gave to the Russians and the Chinese was the fact that the United States was listening to every single phone call over Afghanistan. They had that power. The Russians and Chinese learned that, so they didn't use it. Cell phones, and you would see these pictures in the 2014 annexation of Crimea of cell phones just nailed to walls in the occupied zone because the Russians were not allowed to carry cell phones. Yet, in the beginning of this conflict, I'm getting constantly told by people who, and I keep pointing out, and they call me a Russian stooge for pointing out a fact facts that we know for certain, and they're telling me, "Oh yeah, they you see this video of the Russians like getting killed here? They're making phone calls and talking about how they're getting killed constantly by Ukrainians." I'm like, "Don't use phone calls. I can tell this is fake immediately. Stop it." But no, people continue to believe all this stuff, and because of that, when we had a chance for a ceasefire that could have ended this conflict, we continue to attack people, support a losing war, and tens of thousands of people are dead because we couldn't have intelligence conversations. We refuse to. Though I remember having the debate. Some of you guys have watched that. Some of my older videos with my friends, and they said we. It's clearly now just and the Russians got their water supply, and there's just a defensive line, and it's going to grind on for the next years in a ceasefire thing. And I'm like, no, the Russians are just no, that's not going to happen. I'll tell you what's going to happen. The Russians are going to just mass all their artillery, and they're going to blast their way through there. And what have we watched over the last year? The Russians have taken their artillery, massed it, and blast their way through, killing tens of thousands of people. Now, I didn't realize the trench lines were they've been basically fighting their way through the Maginot Line, right? I did not realize how powerful and crazy that fortress line is. But now we're watching the Russian, and I thought Bakhmut would have fallen a long time ago. But now I see what the Russians are doing. Bakhmut is Verdun. They're just they could probably seal off all the roadways into that city, but they don't want to. They want to have enough. They got the roads under spotter artillery fire, and you can still get in and out of Bakhmut. But once those roads are under fire, so they're killing people coming in, they're killing people getting out, and and they're just forcing Ukrainians to just send more guys into the Verdun meat grinder of Bakhmut. It is Verdun. And much as the Germans did that to the French, which led to France irrevocable damage in France, including a mutiny of the army. We are going to see. I don't know what's happening in Ukraine. They do have a lot more. They don't have the disadvantages of the French, but you have to understand that's what we're seeing here today. It is a trap. And much as Kherson is a trap for the Ukrainians, the Bakhmut and the Russians are just there pounding away. Now, I'm not too sure. McCurse was talking, Alexander McCurse of the Duran was recently talking about how the Russians seem to be building up fortification and fortified lines and certain like heavy fortified lines. And as if they're going to wait out the winter. I don't know. Maybe it's possible. I just can't see. You can't have as many men under arms as the Russians currently have and not put them to use. They got to attack. It's the winter. It's their thing. Maybe they do want to go in the summertime, but it just seems like the Russians always do this. Now, it could be Maskarovka. And Maskarovka is deception operations. And Russia always, since like these early days of Peter the Great, has always conducted their fighting using Maskarovka as a part of their operational art. And that seems possibly that this is just like, we're building all these fortifications here to lull the Ukrainians into thinking we're going to stay out of this, but we're really going to do something interesting somewhere else. And that's entirely possible. It's a theory of mine, but that could be something that's happening. Okay, so he's got yeah. So Dreizen is a man who speaks Russian and Ukrainian because of his parents. And I'm not going to read this out, but you could see this stuff. Yeah, okay, yeah, my wife tells me all this all the time. Moving on, let's cover the opinion polls. Well, and I'll stay away from that. Okay. Because a giant pressure cooler is likely to get crazy, e.g., mass looting once Russia turns light and heat off for the winter. Yeah, we're going to see like millions of people fleeing. Uh, the critical moment may come when the police give up because their own homes are also dark and freezing. Yeah, that's a problem. At that point, it could get wild. Of course, there won't be any revolt because the opposition has been banned and dismantled, right? And the regime's political security arms would shoot to kill. I don't know. Like, you could, how many of your political security arms are there compared to millions of people? As for the armor fantasy, talk a coup to remove Zelensky, but keep the war going is silly. The only possible pro-war coup would be with U.S. backing, yeah, like South Vietnam. Yeah, as long as Americans keep sending money, yeah, that's true. But that's why I've been comparing this to 1974, 75, when the South Vietnamese fell finally because for a lot of different reasons, and you can go and learn all about that other places. But you could that was the American the final summary was the Americans simply stopped paying the bills, and when they stopped paying the bills, it all came crashing down. Now I see the problem with this type of reading. There's no feedback loop for correcting mistakes or bringing the rulers back down to earth. Zelensky's advisor Paul Doliak said on TV last week he expects to speak on the same show in 6 months. Right? Yeah, they're driven the public mad or those who won't. Yeah, it's a madhouse, is what he's saying. When you only once approach, you're always behind, right? It's more yeah, you will have to deprogram them like Germans in 45 and thereafter. The point of the USA and its hegemonic bloc clearing out their arms stocks for the Ukraine is an orgy of loyalty proving some Eastern European countries have given away literally everything of value that they had was the Ukraine would use that stuff to take back all lost territory and end the war this year. Guys, I've said this multiple times. The Russians have a reserve of trained manpower somewhere between 10 to 15 million men. 10 to 15 million men. How can I know this? How can because I just look at them. They have conscription, 600,000 new soldiers every year go through basic training times 20 to 25 years. I can do math. I'm apparently more intelligent than the CIA analysts who don't, and all the American military who can't count the fact that there's 10 to 15 million Russian soldiers that they're going to go through before they use nuclear weapons. Ukraine has 40 million people. We think, and we know 5 million of them fled. And why do we think that? Because they haven't had a proper census, and probably the last census was totally corrupt since 2000. They have not had a proper census in 22 years. Yet these guys are going to hold off the Russians with their 10 million manpower reserve. No, they're going to lose. They were always going to lose. They could have fought better and lasted longer and probably embarrassed the Russians, and we could have done things differently, but we didn't. And now here we are on the other side of this thing, looking at our allies getting deindustrialized, and millions of Ukrainian refugees are going to be hitting Europe at the same time. Europe is going to be running out of energy. Like, how is this going to possibly when this year? Now here he goes. Now, U.S. European military officers and officials are crying to the New York Times and Politico that we're running out. We could not have expected such an intensive war, not remotely like Afghanistan. Oh my goodness! Yes, you could have. Yeah, a huge surprise that fighting a land war with Russia would clean out the garage. Of course, that was all obvious and could have been reported sooner, but only recently did it become a talking point of the Pentagon, which is anxious over maintaining enough stock to deal with China, etc. And naturally, our brave MSME doesn't go ahead of the Pentagon, a free press and all, right? That's why people are watching this, because they can't get the stuff from uh, anywhere else. a reader wrote on the comics and blogs several months ago that Russia is disarming the USA via Ukraine. That's one reason why they didn't go with a full on. I don't know if they understood that when they started this war. And I got a feeling they don't. I really do think my early observations were kind of correct that Russia was just putting on the pressure with a limited war to get the Ukrainians to see, we mean business. We're attacking you and with our tanks. And no, instead, we got like what we've been expecting what would happen to South Korea if they ever went to toe to toe with the North Koreans, right? We started a land war in Asia, and suddenly we're so shocked that bad things are happening. People are starting to suggest that Ukraine get back to peace talks with Russia, but though, as we previously discussed, the country's gonzo, so it's not going to happen. Yeah, I just read that Uncle Sam has chewed out the Ukrainian command for wasting his precious HIMARS missiles on useless, just making a point that we hate you type targets, where there's not one single Russian soldier present. Yeah, I mean, they're using these very expensive missiles to kill, to do terror bombing in Donetsk still, and Lugansk. Like, like, because they're not, they're NAZIs. Okay. So why don't we look into $20 billion of the money? You know what? I'll leave that for another times. The money the Russians have an army and a military industrial complex that is designed to conquer countries, or to beat the West. We have a military industrial complex that is designed to make Boeing, Raytheon, and Lockheed Martin rich. And as a shareholder of two of those companies, it's been a very good year. But I would prefer personally to have a one that works, a military industrial complex that can win wars, beat Russia for a change. Going to the Islamic State in the Greater Sahara. Uh, who, what? I thought these guys were gone. I thought the war on terror was over. That way, if she's still in Congress with the Islamists use a U.S. Stinger missile intended for Ukraine to shoot down a large passenger aircraft, and with Americans on it, and an American large passenger aircraft, MTG could say she was looking into this. She warned about it. Only someone had listed, oh, she's such a leader on this issue. Hey, he's not complaining. At least I'm not either. But at least some people are looking at this and they're starting to say, what? Okay. This one's a bit of a long one. I've been talking about manpower for a bit. Ukrainian manpower has reached the limit. Well, I keep hearing that, but every time it seems they always got more somehow. They already almost fully tapped their surplus male population and simply cannot squeeze much more additional strength out of the populace without drafting with, just to go socioeconomic collapse. I think they'll do it. Taking out the utility and rail workers, port workers, police, essential farm labor, and so forth, as well as men over 50 and even boys 16, 17. I have no doubt they've done both of those things. Otherwise, the army is not short of men yet, but cannot expand. Yeah, that is true. That's their big problem. They can't field more than the 400,000 they have in the field, and Russia's already at 580, according to McGregor. I wouldn't be surprised if it's higher than that. We're beginning to see the end of the road. The army that you see now, including the border guard, all the civilian employees, is almost all there is or is going to be. The Ukraine, with its 29 million remaining residents, let's say 25, less than with the next refugee wave, they will have to let out some teenage boys with their moms cannot remotely match Russia's mobilization period. The biggest problem is that of the 1.5 to 2 million healthy youngish males who left the country for Europe since 2014, not even counting the ones who left for Russia, have come back to help fight Russia. They may feel one way or another about the war, but most of residents can't be deported on a whim and come from where they are. Even if it gets bad, it's still way better than the Ukraine. That's going to be true. This is the elephant in the room that no one is talking about. When the Maidan regime broke with Russia, they killed the economy. The youngest and brightest took off, and now these people are gone, gone, gone. Actions have consequences. So although these war could last for years, goobers do not know what they are talking about. I guess I'm avoiding those certain words there. Just because you want the war to last for years, well, so what? I want to lose 35 pounds and be super sexy again. At least that hypothetically possible. Yeah, I don't know about super sexy, but I definitely lost 55 pounds since the start of the pandemic. Incidentally, it was sort of like part of it. It was like I'm only allowed to leave the house for an hour a day, kind of stuff. So I was going to make use of my 1 hour of freedom. Not that they were really going out there too bad. Uh, I had also looked in, watched something on Dave Rubin and with a dietitian who was explaining some stuff, and I just said, okay, it's time to change this up. And I've managed to keep the weight off. Good for me. Yeah. And they're showing all our Zig Heil friends in the Ukrainian army. And that's why I couldn't get on. Like, I just said to myself, look, if we can't fight a war to get rid of these people, when can you? And speaking from a country that my father's family came from, where they killed 1 in 6 of us, I'm not happy with it. It's definitely an ideology that I think needs to go. And though I'm not supporting Russia, as I've said multiple times, I do not support them, the Ukrainians either. And people will say, well, being neutral just means this. No, no, it doesn't. It doesn't mean that at all. Things are not black and white. No, X and no. Oh, like you can dislike two things at the same time. Well, at least I can. Maybe that's the problem. They can't. They, so they, these people are physically and emotionally, mentally incapable of holding two separate thought, being uh, against two different things at the same time. I guess I'm a more evolved human being than them. Okay. Oh yeah, and he's going now. He's talking about his thing, uh, his pandemic of the epidemic of the of the of the the thing, as Maverick of Wall Street calls it, the thing we can't talk about on YouTube. Uh, he believes that the vaccinated are going to. There's a killer variant that's going to be like come back. I still haven't seen this. I think it's a lot less of a problem, but I think the problem is that we're we're seeing this. The people who are most shot up are the most people who are in the hospital, so they're getting sicker easier. And it does. I won't go. I'm not a doctor. I don't know this stuff. I just knew the lockdowns were stupid, and it was quite obvious. And the reason why people will not come about talk about it is just like communism. People don't, or being a hippie, like people don't want to admit that they were just a bunch of cowards and they sacrificed millions of people to keep themselves alive. That's it. It's just like communism. Like people, when Khrushchev came out and said Stalin killed all these people, look at this, and provided the evidence, and so many people like, no, that's not possible. That's not true. It's impossible. That's it. That's why we have all these problems. Is people can't admit they're wrong, and they can't, because admitting they're wrong means that they are incidentally responsible for for the deaths of millions of people who are going to die now younger and more, and they can't handle that. So they're just going to do what we've done here in Canada: sweep it all under the rug. Oh, just like everything else we do around here, we're just going to ignore pretend it never happened, and move on with our lives. That's exactly what's happening here in Canada. It's kind of sad, but yeah, of the 100,000 dead, in All sorts ran with the 100,000 dead figure, as it was some kind of revelation from Lyon. Who was so well plugged into military intelligence. No, rumors come from. Yeah, the figure must have come from Lyon's speechwriter's 15-year-old airhead research assistant intern who found it somewhere on Instagram. And that's why she said 100,000 officers, not soldiers or military personnel. This was written by someone who doesn't know the difference. If you lost 100,000 you would have probably lost 2 men in total. Low. Yeah. Apparently, one of the Schultz's grandfathers was a general in a certain SS. Okay, so he's going to give since February 24th, 2022. He's doing some math here. Most people citing claims of 100,000 now standing at 130,000 are unaware of the Russian military culture and enemy losses dead and wounded. Even with many of the wounded likely to return to duty, doesn't matter. What Russian officers estimate and value is how many enemy personnel were lost to duty in a given battle operation, such that they will not be immediately available for the next round in a given sector, and then you can plan accordingly with your own force disposition. Of course, someone at MOD is picking up and adding all the numbers cumulatively and running a tally in a nice presentation, but that's just PR, right? The Russian side has taken at least 12,000 uniformed prisoners, over 4,000 Mariupol alone, and freed back 2,000 of them on its own. The Ukrainian side has taken 20,000 to 2,500 uniformed prisoners, freed possibly most of them for its own. Yeah, all the POW abuse is shot. Now, one of the ones that got me, I'm going to get a little controversial here, is the most dangerous military operation you can perform is often surrendering. You got all these hyped up 20-year-old kids running around with rifles. Some of them may be on like stems, talking to and you now are going to try and walk and they've been under artillery fire, they've got the sand in their eyes, they haven't slept for 3 days, and you're going to walk over to them and say, hey, I'm dropping my gun, take me prisoner. And if God help you, that's what happened a few weeks ago, from what I understand, when some Russians tried to surrender and one of their guys decided not to, and he got the rest of his squad killed. And that's what happened there. Like, you can't be too like when you are surrendering, if one of you resists, that makes it harder for anyone else to surrender. So either you go all in or you don't. Remember, it became common practice for American soldiers just to shoot Japanese on sight when because they didn't surrender. After a few times, when surrendering Japanese would do that, they would pretend it and then throw a grenade, or like have guys walking behind the first group with machine guns so that they could kill a few more Americans. After a little while of that, you just stop taking prisoners, and that's what's been happening. So that's why it's really dangerous to surrender, and unless you're coming out on an individual basis. So that's a situation that has to be looked at. Okay. So he's giving us a real breakdown on this. Yeah, and he's talking about civilian deaths. I'm not that worried about it. Anyways, that was kind of my looking at what he's been doing. So I shared that. Maybe I'll do that in the future when I'm doing one of these articles. I'll just go online and talk about how I feel about them and see that kind of stuff. Anyways, if you like what you see, like, share, subscribe below. Leave a comment. I appreciate that. You can follow me and support me on my locals page, link below. Let me just find the buttons here. And thanks for coming out. And I'll see you guys later. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you earlier, Mr. Thomas Dooley. Everyone has a binary brain. It's frustrating. Yes, it is so frustrating. Oh well. Anyways, I appreciate you coming out and watching. I've had a couple people here. I've been talking for nearly an hour. So yeah, maybe like I said, that it's probably read, reading the news together might be a thing that we can certainly do here on the Spy Guy channel. And I tried that very early on when I first started this channel, and I basically archive a lot of those videos because I was not in a good place when I was doing that. That point where I was very frustrated earlier, I was like that all the time. So I appreciate you coming out. Like I said, if you want to see more, go over to my locals channel and you subscribe there. That you can talk to me. I definitely will be responding to anyone who comments on locals. Oh, hey, here's something. A few weeks ago, I was doing a live stream, just game party with my friends, and someone's like, "Hey, did you know there's someone dropping one of those porn star links on your site?" And I'm like, my very first porn commenter. I felt so honored. Anyways, it's been great hanging out with you all. I got to get the next load of laundry in. So, like I said, if you like this, subscribe and share and tell your friends. Bye bye.